Hello, I'm Tom Martin, and welcome back to another episode of the San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring myself, Tom Martin, longtime journalist with ABC News, CNN, and CBS News, and my wise friend out on the West Coast, Mr. David Parker. Hey, David, how are you, sir?
I'm fine.
Great to see you. David, as many of you know, most of you know, is the author of two amazing books, Income and Wealth, and his latest book is titled A San Francisco Conservative, hence the title of our series here. And we haven't spoken in a little while. Our audience might not know that. We hadn't spoken in a while. And in this intervening time, I see headlines here and there about inflation, gasoline prices, crisis, need for stronger government intervention, and so on. And what the heck's going on with the economy, David?
Well, people like to use the word inflation, and that's probably okay because everybody understands that prices are going up, but it's not really inflation. And if you're in business, you have to know what inflation is and what inflation is not. Inflation is when government prints money. And for President Biden's family bailout plan for the nation, I'm not positive, but I think some money was printed to make that possible. Maybe $1 trillion or so. Well, that's inflationary. That's what Milton Friedman says is the only definition of inflation, is the money that's not backed up by anything. And so whatever is backing it up is devalued. And if it's gold or real estate or the promise of the federal government to make a dollar stand behind the dollar, whatever that promise is devalued, and the market senses that, and immediately we have inflation to compensate for that. And it's the start of many wars that have started because of that. They had hyperinflation in Germany before World War II. That was one of the great causes of people had wheelbarrows of money. It had no value. Like in Zaire, they've had that problem. Argentina has that problem. It's always solving their problems by printing money. It's not money that anybody earned. And the market says, no, you don't. We're going to devalue that currency to nothing if that's how you're going to respond to a real problem.
So I apologize. I just wanted to mention one thing. I received an interesting photo. A friend of mine in Los Angeles sent me a photo today of the sign at their local gas station, and it was, every level of gas over $7 a gallon. It's like, it's not quite that bad in Connecticut where I am, but that's shocking. Makes you think twice. So you're saying that that's not anything going out of, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're saying that's a reflection. That inflation is our government or a government printing money, and that the prices themselves, $7 plus a gallon, is a reflection of what the market makes of the job our government's doing, I guess, right?
If it's not the printing of money, because I'm not sure we're printing money right now, but it's a reflection that something is wrong. And in general, what's wrong is there's a supply shortage and there's a demand surplus. People are recovering from the pandemic. The economy is recovering. During the pandemic, people were saving money. They weren't spending money. So the average American consumer, or even worldwide, people have money in the bank because they weren't spending it for 2 years. They weren't eating out every night or flying around the world and in jets and spending a lot of money, or going to huge entertainment and sports events. People have money in the bank, and they're coming back out into the world, and they're spending, and the supply chain is really backed up. I went to order a pair of running shoes from my dealer here in the Bay Area, and didn't have my size. He says, I'll order. Then he asked me, how long do you think it's going to take for those shoes to come in? I says, a month or two, about a year.
Oh my gosh.
I says, why? Because stuff like a tennis shoe, that's very often made in China. And China has been very strict about their lockdowns. Every time the corona pops up, they lock down their factories, they lock down the population. So those factories are backed up, really backed up. And worldwide, factories cannot meet demand for almost anything, almost anything. So when you have supply and huge shortage, but demand over the top, everybody has money and is doing projects and building, that is a real surge in demand. And then that's economics one. Price is a function of supply and demand. And so the demand is more than supply, price is up. That's not inflation.
Okay.
And there's no real immediate turnaround, in my opinion, though it will have to turn around. $7 a gallon will come down to $5, but before it used to be $3. So these high prices might be here for a while.
So are you saying, we're in a year that contains a midterm election in November? There are a lot of primaries going on currently, and the Republicans seem to have talking points where let's blame high gasoline prices and inflation on President Biden. That'd be a good way to recapture the House and Senate. Are you saying those accusations are unfair and that President Biden's really doing a great job?
It's fair in the sense that if it were a Republican in office, the Democrats would say the same thing. That's just politics. That's just part of the game. And that's why I say, and the word inflation is wrong, but everybody uses it, and it's not so wrong, but it's fundamentally wrong. It's not inflation, but they're going to call it inflation because that's good for politics. Look what the other side is doing. But no matter who's in office, the opposing team would be saying the very same thing. So
people feel it in their wallet, in their pocketbook. And as I'm listening to all these news stories recently, I keep thinking about your books, especially Income and Wealth, when you say, darn it, you need to just get control. Don't spend beyond your means. They said, another recent event is that the Federal Reserve hiked the interest rate and say, well, that'll fix things. And that'll be passed along to all of us with credit cards, higher interest rates, mortgages, and so on, obviously. But again, I keep thinking, when I hear news like this, I keep thinking back to your book, Income and Wealth. It's like, if you would just act more responsibly, rein things in, it's about taking personal responsibility, right?
Right. It's one of my themes is that people are spending, in general, all social strata are spending too much. They're living beyond their means. We have a very wealthy country, and so wealthy that the bottom 5% is really living better than most of the rest of the world. The bottom 5%. We forget that. And but even people in the middle, they think we're such a wealthy country, and they see their neighbors get a new car or living in a bigger apartment or a bigger house, and they just can't help it. And they want that too. They want their children to have all of that, but it's really beyond their means. In San Francisco, you can't ask a young person to go buy a home for $1.5 million. That's what they cost. Nobody's making that kind of salary. So it's, in my opinion, I think people should, if you want to live in an expensive location, and there's a lot of good reasons to do that, is you have to start maybe sharing 2 families per household. That'll solve a lot of problems. Share the car, share the internet, share everything. That'll take a lot of pressure off people. And if you reduce demand, yes, in theory, if you raise interest rates, people don't qualify for homes. Their credit card interest is getting too high. They'll naturally stop buying a little bit. So if you reduce demand, the price will come down. In theory, that's actually correct.
Yeah.
And that's the only way for price to come down. Demand has to come down in relation to supply.
I just wanted to mention, for those of you joining us midstream here through this episode, this podcast is titled A San Francisco Conservative. That's the title of David Parker's new book, and David is joining us from San Francisco. Again, I'm Tom Martin, your interrogator, journalist, and all that kind of thing. But David, one of the things I love about your books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative, is that they're books clearly written by someone who's there in the trenches, working, investing, making business decisions. I've read so many books about the economy by professors, and they've written 30 books, but they've, other than stepping into a classroom, they haven't really done any other kind of work. I mean, I was just wondering how you're managing your businesses these days. I know it's, whether we should call it inflation or not, you must have to deal with, the state of the economy. We all do, right?
Right. I'm glad you said that, because that's what I think my books have. One thing my books have to offer. You read it, this is not an academic writing, though it's scholarly writing. I have footnotes and I back up everything I say, but it's somebody whose thumb is on the pulse of the economy, because I'm canceling projects left and right. I'm going to build here, I'm going to build there, and no, I've stopped all these things, and everybody's mad at me. This is I don't. It's not penciling out anymore. The cost of construction is so high, and the rents are not particularly going up. So yeah, I'm right on it. I feel the economy personally, because I'm highly invested, and every day I'm making decisions, and every day I'm reminded of what's going on. I'm not sitting in the classroom and it doesn't make any difference. I own my own house, and that's all I own, as most professors. I own tons of stuff, and things come up. Contractors call me. Nope, stop that project. Nope, stop that project. It's costs are too high, so I'm on it.
I was speaking with a friend who speaks with a lot of business people around the world as kind of a business coach, and the topic was, options analysis, as far as not specifically stock options, but you have this idea for a project. What are the risks? And sort of the bottom line for me, not being an expert necessarily in that realm, is don't be a victim of wishful thinking. I really want this to work out. I hope this will work out. I mean, I grew up in Miami, where I saw them building, 3,000 condo buildings, and it's like, oops, I think we overbid it here. And, that was a mistake that lasted for decades, So I was just wondering, do you have any advice for people as far as when they make business decisions, whether it's real estate or something else?
Yeah, I do. The reason most people go broke in business, and maybe even in personal life, is they don't have the wealth or the savings to hold on in a downturn. And there's always a downturn. This time it's a real one, for a pandemic, for health. It doesn't happen that often. But San Francisco earthquakes do happen, and in Miami tornadoes or hurricanes happen. That's just part of life, and things go wrong, period. And you have to be able to hold on. People who can't hold on, they don't have the backup. Now, I'm always aware of how much backup I have, because then you can deal. Then a person in business knows you can deal with strength. If the economy crashes, people have homes or businesses have property that the mortgage is the value of the property, because the economy crashed. There's no place for a down payment, and banks are taking back properties, and it's very bad for their stock price. The public says, what kind of bank is this? You're making loans, now you're taking them all back. Don't you qualify your people? So banks don't want to have to face the public on their stock board meetings. So they want to get rid of those failing loans, and they'll give them away. I've bought properties from banks. Take it. He just will give it to you, but they won't give it to anybody, because they don't want it back. They give it to people who are very strong financially, and who they know, and who have experience in operating properties or factories, or that's who they looking for. So that's one of the things I do as a professional investor. I keep a very high very high cash reserves, and I make sure my properties have very high net incomes. So when the bank looks at me, fine, here's six buildings, you can have them. Don't give them back to us now.
Yeah.
That's the trade-off. Don't give them back to us, because you can't hold them.
Right.
That's part of professional investment.
I'm not sure
that you don't get in an academic textbook.
Yeah. That's a key. I can see how that's crucial knowledge. Absolutely. I I'm not sure if we have entered a bear market. I don't follow the stock market day to day, but I get the sense we have, or it looks like we may enter a bear market. And some people have told me that could last for a year or two if we're patterns, again, I'm sure more of an expert than I am, but they also said, as you said, with those, properties available for a bargain price to the right person, that coming out of that bear market, there's plenty of opportunities. My friend who I'd mentioned earlier, he's very interested in Warren Buffett. And he said, somebody like Warren Buffett just sees this, like you said, the cycles, cyclical, and that we should be looking for opportunities, or soon we'll be able to look for opportunities.
That's exactly my thought. I'm waiting for these downturns. Why buy property at the height of the market when you can buy it at the bottom of the market? And the bottom of the markets happen all the time. On a regular basis, we're at the bottom of the market, or low enough that you can make a deal that makes sense. So all these projects that I've been nixing left and right, I was going to do a huge commissary kitchen, which I talked to you once before. I was going to spend $5 million on 6 beautiful state-of-the-art kitchens for those ghost kitchens, and with the COVID, what do they call those drivers delivering food left and right. And then I just looked at it, and the cost went up. During the year I was deciding, I think I invested close to $500,000, and I nixed it. $500,000 loss, but I saved myself $5 million though. That's what it costs to be cautious, and you don't win everything in life. And you have to know when to stop.
Sounds a little like playing poker or something. You have to know when to stop. If you just because you were in that amount didn't mean you want to put the full amount in. Well, I guess I better go all the way.
Yeah, Richard Branson influenced me. That's his name, from Virgin.
Branson.
He said, if you're not at risk for part of your portfolio, you can't go anywhere. You're not going to. Part of your portfolio has to be at risk, but not your whole portfolio.
Yeah,
maybe 10% or something like that. And that's venture capitalism. That's the rule for venture capitalism. They'll fund 100 pharma projects, and 99 are not going to make it. But the one that makes it will more than offset all the other investment.
Yeah.
But for venture capitalism to throw 99 projects, just throw them out, that's only 10% of their worth. They're not crazy. They're only putting 10% at gamble, at risk.
Well, I'm
knowing that 99% of those are not going to work.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm coming out of this conversation with a sense of optimism. I thought I was getting worried about that price of a gallon of gasoline, but now I'm thinking about opportunities. So this is great.
Yeah. Let's go buy a gas station.
Anyway, well, thank you, David. As always, this has been wonderful and stimulating. And I just want to remind everybody to be sure to pick up copies of David's books, Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. You can do that on David's website, davidparkeressays.com, and you can purchase them through Amazon as well. So thank you, David. Look forward to the next time.
Me too. Thank you.